Hello, this is David from Cognitive Counseling. Tonight's going to be a story of two submissions. I always say that I welcome positive and negative feedback. And boy, did I get some. And I very much thank you. So I'm going to start off with Dan, who writes on the video I just did from last night, which was on defunding the police. Should we throw out the baby with the bathwater? Now, again, Dan, I thank you very much for your comments, and I'm going to take them with the seriousness that you wrote your responses, and hope to, again, you hopefully get some feedback from me, and then we could have a thought exchange, and to see whether or not either of us could move the pendulum somewhere, or we both agree that we're going to just disagree, which is also okay. So, Dan starts off saying if you kick your dog enough, it may turn slightly violent. And when it does turn slightly violent, and you blame the dog for being slightly violent, then you blame the dog for being violent. It's an example of what people feel on the day-to-day. And I don't disagree with you at all. I think that when you get people upset and angry, you're going to get a situation where they're going to act out. And people choose to act out in different ways. I have no issue with that statement. That's a statement of fact. The next thing you say is, how many unemployed police are there? Oh wait, they're all getting overtime pay for standing and not providing community relief. Now, this gets more complex. There's been a lot of stand-down orders to police about what they should do and shouldn't do, when to act, when not to act. You just saw what happened in Seattle, where Chaz, which turned to Chop, which was told basically the police to stop and not do anything. And sadly, there were people murdered because of it. Not to mention who else suffered from crimes and other situations. You now have business owners now suing the city for the things that have happened to their property and things of that to them. I don't disagree with the idea that the police make mistakes and do things that are wrong. I actually agree with you again on that. I don't have any issue with that issue. Then you go on to say is, how much have we paid in 2020 to police per city? And I don't know the answer to that. And I don't think that that's what my video was about. It wasn't about the political aspect of should the police be doing this? Should police get more money, less money? That wasn't what it was about. My video was about the idea of when you change a system without understanding the ramifications of what you're putting into place, you're going to have a much greater problem than you realize. It's called the law of unintended consequences, and that's what I was really trying to explain. I don't have an issue about how much money is being paid to them or not being paid to them. And then you go on, what about the U.S. military budget while people are struggling? And again, now this comes down to a fundamental question that you're asking here. First off, what about the USA military budget, which has nothing to do with the police budget? That has to do with foreign domestic threats to the federal government. Again, you could have a political difference of opinion than a lot of other people on that, which is fine. And then you say, while people are struggling, and this is where it comes down to a fundamental aspect that that people are going to have differences of opinion on, and which are absolutely appropriate. Certain people believe that it is the premise of people to take care of themselves, and that government is supposed to stay out of their way so that they can achieve what they want to achieve. Then you have other people who believe that the point of government is to have to take care of people. And this is a struggle that people have on political spectrums, which is fine. I mean, you're going to find people have different disagreements about that. But again, my video has nothing to do with that disagreement. It only has to do with the idea of what happens when you say you're going to get rid of one system in order to replace it with something else that can cause a lot more problems with you realize. Dan goes on, why are people struggling in this country? What about the bailouts? What about the corruption? And again, I don't think I disagree with anything that you're saying, Dan. I happen to agree. I think there are people struggling in this country. The bailouts absolutely happened. I think there are going to be more bailouts coming up right now, again, for the COVID situation that they're working on. And there's definitely corruption. But again, I don't think anything to do with the police. I do agree that there's corruption in the police system. as there's going to be corruption in any system you create. There has not been a system in this world, not any system, that hasn't been corrupt. Not in the Catholic Church, not in college systems, not in governments, not in chess tournaments. There has been corruption in every single semblance of people gathering. There's going to be corruption. The difference is, Dan, I actually believe that corruption is part of human nature, that corruption will always be there. Now, it doesn't mean we don't do anything about it, but to state we're going to get rid of corruption and stamp it out, I think is basically living in a pipe dream. And when you hear people talk about creating a police force that we will stamp out and there'll never be corruption again, I think that there's a big problem with that. Dan continues, crime will not go away either way. What's the meaning of a Second Amendment? Why do you suppose the Second Amendment say, oh yeah, everyone should have guns? Let's go in that direction, in my opinion. Well, Dan, and again, there are people that believe like you, that, basically we should just leave it up to the fact that people should have guns and let people deal with it themselves. I just did a video, I'm going to link it on this video, on this specific issue about de-escalation. And maybe when you see that video and you see what happens, maybe you'll understand why I don't believe that you should allow people to have guns to determine that without the police. Because I think going from a bump to a gunfight is not really a good idea. I think you'll have a lot more dead people. But if you have the idea of going back to the OK Corral and we're going to let people live by the gun and die by the gun, it's not a world I'd like to live in. It may be one that you'd want to live in, and maybe that's the way you would like things to be. But I don't know if everybody in society would like that, and I personally would not. You said crime will not go away either way, and I happen to agree with you. I don't think crime is going to go away either way. But if you take a look in New York in the 1990s and 80s, you'll see that the average murder rate, the people murdered, was over 2,000 something people a year, every year. Now, I remember when Giuliani came to be mayor, and I thought he was going to do horrific. I mean, I really, honestly, it's one of the times, and again, people always say, David, when do you admit you're wrong? I was wrong about that. I was absolutely wrong about that. I thought when Giuliani came into power, oh my God, I thought, we're going to hell in a handbasket. But for anybody that lived in New York in that time period, we went from 2,000 murders at the time when he came to 500. And because of what he set up, we've been going down since. The sad part is, and this is why now New Yorkers are getting very upset at Mayor de Blasio, is for the first time since we've been on that downtrend, we're now going back up. Now again, we're not going to be able to get rid of crime totally. I agree with you, Dan. But I'd rather have 2,000 murders. Let me rephrase that. I'd rather have 500 murders a year, which I think we're down to 300 or 200, than to 2,000 murders a year. And to me, that's not a theoretical point. It's not a theoretical standpoint. It's a practical one of people's lives and people being alive. And just want you to be aware, the majority of where those murders took place were in minority communities. So it's not a matter of, well, we just saved the people who were rich and were wealthy and that was the neighborhood that was being saved. It was poor and minority neighborhoods that the crime rates dropped dramatically in. And for me, I think that was a good thing. And that's the population I worked with more often than not. And I liked seeing them alive. I liked the fact that there was less deaths. It made me much happier. In one of the newspapers we had was the police blotter and the obituaries. I used to check them out every week, and there would be murder after murder after murder. And those things, now they took it away because there wasn't enough to fill up the pages. And I thought that was a really good change. Now, you could disagree with me, and you might like the idea of that. I don't. You said, what is the meaning of the Second Amendment? Well, I agree that if you take away the police, that people are going to utilize their Second Amendment rights much greater. And you're going to see what happened in that de-escalation video. And Dan, I really do hope that you will watch that video and you could tell me your thoughts. And is that what you want to say? Community police? Again, when you have a population that has guns, community policing is not really a good idea. In Nassau County, they have something called the auxiliary police, and they do very limited things, and there's a reason for that. If you make your primary police force a community police force, you're looking for a lot of trouble. Dan continues, mental health professionals, mainly psychologists, which are the new science, still should be hired, relocating money for that, and the neighborhood police system that works better. Again, as a mental health professional, I can honestly tell you they're not really equipped to deal with police situations. And definitely not mental health police situations. Yes, I think it would be a great idea to have mental health professionals alongside police officers dealing with those situations. Very similar to what we did in the crisis team. And that would really be a great idea in terms of revolutionizing police across the country, where you would have on staff mental health professionals that worked alongside police officers both to train in terms of mental health issues as well as to go on calls, not necessarily to always be in charge or to take over, but definitely to help in terms of de-escalating situations that maybe a police officer would not be equipped. That does not mean that the mental health professional in every case is going to be able to do that. So together, they would have a much better way of being able to lessen the amount of people shot who have mental health issues by police officers. At the same time, you'd have mental health professionals on scene being able to help. Now that would be a solution, but actually that would cost more money for police, not less. That would mean that they would have to hire those professionals to be a part of that system, which, by the way, I think would be an excellent idea. And Dan, you say the next part is, I think you're wrong, and you're entitled to that. You have every right to think that I'm wrong about something. But I think that at least my position is evidence-based, meaning that I can point to you about why I believe what I believe. And if you have different ability and statistics that would show me why this would save more lives, I would love to hear it. How many psychologists in the USA with degrees are employed? How many psychologists been considered how long has psychology have been considered a science? What has our country done to provide more therapy and community relief in the last 12 years? How are cities reacting to all these protests? Why did New York City redistribute their $4 billion police budget? What is the New York City Police Department trying to do when they were recently moving large number of their police budget around their system into the other police organizations and promising $100 million or new efforts to meet the needs of its local citizens? Now, Dan, you ask a lot of really good questions. And again, I have no issues about your questions and about what these things are done. In terms of how many psychologists are unemployed, I'm actually not exactly sure. I'm sure there are some. I'm not sure you want the unemployed ones, though, as your people working with the police. But I generally think you would want people who are skilled and have knowledge in these areas to be working alongside. How long has psychology been considered a science? Well, we can go back. Depends whether or not you consider Freudian psychoanalysis to be one or not. But I think that if you go to the behaviorist model, you would actually be able to say at least that's a science there, and that it's been around since then. And again, I think that specifically New York City has done a lot to provide more therapy and community relief in the last 12 years. There are mobile crisis teams in all areas. There's a lot more free service for people that actually need it. And there are crisis centers and clinics that will see people that have no money. So there is a lot more services available to people. One of the things I do in my office is help people who have difficulties connecting to services or don't know they exist. In terms of what happened with the money in the budget, again, these are great questions to find out. And again, I'm not exactly sure of the ins and outs of the specifics of all the money that goes in places. And that wasn't, again, where I was going in my video. But I want to say thank you very much, Dan, for sharing your thoughts and telling me why you think I was wrong. I think I very much appreciate it. I don't have a problem hearing you out. I hope that you will listen to the things that I said. I hope you'll watch the other video with the de-escalation, and you tell me what you think would happen if we have more people with guns, and whether or not you think more people are going to be alive or more people are going to be dead. I don't think the police system is a perfect system. I don't think it'll ever be a perfect system. But I think it's still better than a lot of other systems that people think are going to be better, and it's going to happen is a lot more people are going to be dead. Like I said, what happened in Chaz and Chop was very, very sad. And there are more dead people now because of it. And I don't like seeing it. I don't like seeing death. I don't like seeing any of the stuff that's going on. And it hurts. I do care about people. I know it's hard to understand. You don't know who I am as a person. But the reason why I do what I do has to do with because I want people to do well. I like when people get better. I like when people make changes in their life that actually lead to better consequences. What I don't like is destruction and waste of life. So again, Dan, I thank you very much for your response. I know you disliked the video. I hope you'll take a rethink about it. And again, if you think what I'm saying now is wrong, I'd love to hear your point of view and why you think that way. And again, I thank you very much. Now, the next comment I got was from Jen, who takes the opposite approach of Dan and was very, very supportive of the last video I did. And Jen writes, happy 4th and back at you, even though I'm watching this on the 5th. Well, I posted on the 5th, so that's okay. I normally shoot the video and then I post it the next day, so it's always the day later. So just be aware of that. I think it's the first time I truly understand the meaning behind what is, in my opinion, and it's a very strange saying, throwing out the baby with the bathwater. To me, the concept of defunding the police is no different than burning down a house that has a leaking sink. It makes no sense to me, especially that no one has a plan. How can any rational, responsible individual commit such a drastic plan when they have no idea how to do it? Personally, I think they're all out of their minds. Well, Jen, what you're stating here is exactly what my idea was in that video, and I very much appreciate you pulling that out. It's almost what happened when we put together Obamacare. Obamacare was designed to take care of the 30 million uninsured at the time. Now, it's hilarious, and I don't mean it in a funny way, but in an ironic way, that the same 30 million are still uninsured today. That the idea of what the Obama plan was to help people get that middle gap for insurance didn't do the job. So the aspect of an idea of something without understanding its ramification, you put all this money and you created all these new regulations and things, and you didn't fix your problem. So that's exactly my point. You go on. Do we have a ginormous problem with racial inequality in this country? Absolutely. Do the police use excessive or lethal force when other options are available? In my opinion, yes, they do. But I still believe there are way more good cops than bad cops. But maybe that's because I'm from New York and racial issues, while present, are not always blatant, and in some of the southern states. Well, I'm going to have to disagree with you. I don't think there's any place where it's blatant all the time. I think that there are issues, but I don't think that you can say this one area, it's so much more blatant than in this area. And as I made mention, and I may put the link in here, there's a great debate with Candace Owens and Mark Lamont Hill. And in that debate, and I didn't know this until I heard him say it, Mark Lamont Hill said, when it comes to actual shootings, there is no racial disparity in terms of that. Now, I thought there was, but according to him, there isn't. And then he tells you that there is in terms of the police brutality, like getting physical, but not in terms of shootings, which I thought was interesting, and I did not know. Because the narrative that we hear and we see is based upon the media presentation. So we get a skewed version. Now, I didn't go through all the numbers and all the statistics on this, as I don't have the time, nor would I want to. It's to me, it's heartbreaking. It tears at your hearts on these things. But I think the aspect here is that the system that we have, we should work to make better. We all know that in marriages, there's a percentage of domestic violence that takes place. And domestic violence is horrible. I mean, really horrible. But nobody's going to say, let's get rid of marriage so that we stop domestic violence. So we just throw out the institution. Men and women no longer get married, they no longer live together, and we just get rid of that. This way kids can grow up in single-parent homes, we'll figure out which one's the better parent, they can live with them, and that'd be great. If you know anything about the studies that take place with single-parent families, you know exactly how the kids do, which is much worse. That would be a law of unintended consequence, and that's what it's much more like. Jen continues. I watched a TikTok video where a police officer was en route to a defund the police rally because the organizer of the rally wanted a police presence for security. Does that make any sense? If the police department is so bad you need to defund, why would anyone trust them to provide security for a rally? Wasn't the goal is to get them all fired? Not only in my opinion is that oxymoronic, it's messed up. How do you complain about the people that you asked to protect you? Either they're trustworthy or they're not. And if they're not, which clearly they aren't, because the presence was requested, then you don't need to be defunded. They just need to reconstruct and retrained. There needs to be a better system in place to identify and hold accountable those officers who do not live up to the standards to a police officer is expected to. And again, Jen, I agree with everything that you said in that sentence, in that statement, that there does need to be better training. There does need to be a way of looking at different things. And as I said, I think I like Dan's idea of also putting therapists in line with police officers, not as a replacement, but in addition, in specifically responding to people with mental health issues and helping to de-escalate certain situations. But getting away from that for a minute, I think what you're saying is absolutely true. I think there was a rally also where there was a shooting during one of the rallies, and they were calling the police as well, because that's what people are going to do when your life is in danger. I made mention of this in another video, but I'm going to tell you the story again. I was coming back from work, and all of a sudden in the street I saw this kid running, very upset, and looked like he was doing no good. A couple of minutes later, I didn't want to get involved, a couple of minutes later, I see this woman, and she's screaming, "Somebody help me, somebody help me." So I pulled over my car, and I said to the woman, what do you need? She says, "My son just was attacked, he just got a knife, and he's going after them." I said, "What do you want to do?" She goes, "I want to go to the police precinct, and I want to stop him." She was an African-American woman, took her in my car, we drove to the precinct, and the police were able to save her son from getting killed, or him from killing somebody else. That's what people will do in that situation. In the video, in the de-escalation, the African-American woman was saying, call the police. Because the reality was that when people are feeling in danger, that's who you're going to go to. Now, this idea of, well, we're just going to sit and lambast all of them is problematic because it puts us all in a less safe situation. Jen continues, "In my opinion, the city council president has absolutely no clue of the damage, repercussions, and what they are committing to will cause. I think what you're saying, the repercussions that committing it will cause. While I do not agree that defunding the police is the answer, I'm not qualified to determine if there's a better solution or out there, and I'm damn sure that before someone commits to doing anything even remotely close to that, there should be a viable, logical, and effective solution. There is no business, company, or organization that would ever consider a change like that without thorough research, cohesive logic, replacement plan, and it terrifies me that politicians and administrators can make a commitment like this for an organization as important as the police force. Furthermore, I don't understand why this hasn't occurred to anyone yet. Again, my opinion, decisions makers are more worried about appeasing the public and bad publicity than they are worried about doing their due diligence and making sure it's done correctly. And again, I think that my video, Jen, was exactly to this concept, is that you don't recognize what could happen. And something sounds like a good idea until you realize what it's going to cause on the other end. And that's the problem, is the lack of recognition of that cause. In fact, one of the reasons, and I can't say scientifically this is the case, one of the reasons why I think that now in New York shootings have gone up so dramatically, and they have, is because people are so frustrated and angry that they're lashing out. And because there is a disrespect to the authority in general, they feel like they can do what they like and they're going to be able to get away with it. And it's sad because people are now suffering because of it. And by the way, not only is calling the police not an act of privilege, and how can she come to that conclusion? I love to understand. Feeling fear is not something you want to create in society, because when people are afraid, they act out of fear and don't usually end well for anyone. Again, Jen, you hit the nail straight on the head on this one, and it's exactly why I did the de-escalation video, because you're absolutely right. When you create fear in more people, and in fact, Dan, you said the same thing. If you kick your dog enough, it's going to turn violent. If you continually try to create fear in people, they're going to turn violent. One of my favorite Twilight Zone episodes is it all happened on Mulberry Street. And all it was these aliens that were turning the lights on and off in different houses, and how the neighbors turned on each other and how violence ensued. because fear breeds violence. So this aspect of creating fear in people is very, very sick and psychologically damaging. It's going to cause people to become more violent. And you're both, Jen and Dan, even though you totally disagree with each other, on that you both agree. I pray to God that you think this through more thoroughly and come up with a plan that satisfies the need to end police brutality and desires of protesters, but do not compromise the security of the city. And Jen, I happen to agree with you, but I have to say this. I don't think we're ever going to put an end to police brutality. I think that is a pie in this. That's like saying I think we're going to put an end to murder. We're just going to wipe out hunger. We're gonna make poverty. We'll change poverty. It's a lack of understanding of a system. And I'm not saying that we should never punish it. We should, and we not hold these people accountable. We should, but the aspect of wiping it out implies that we're going to make perfect human beings, and that's never going to be the case. Let's wipe out crime. It doesn't happen. But I do believe that we have to do what's in the best interest of our society, and really the case is that the only thing we can do is in our locus of control and be able to vote for the things that we think are right. Now, you, Jen, and Dan very much diametrically opposed. And by the way, me and Dan also very much opposed on this specific issue, although I agree with some of the points that Dan made in reference to that. And I know that, Jen, you wrote specific things to Dan. And by the way, Ed, thank you very much also. I see that you also wrote specific things to Dan. And I don't need to go through the specifics of each one of them. If Dan chooses to answer you guys, he will. But I wanted to be able to first give a hopefully an understanding. And again, I will be posting both the video of my de-escalation as well as the Candace Owens and Mark Lamont Hill video, because I think it's really important to hear two people discussing something. They totally disagree with each other, and hopefully give them two ideas and more information, because that's a lot of times what we do is we don't understand that we have feelings, and it's great that we have a feeling, but the decisions that we make have sometimes dire consequences, and sadly in this one could be life and death consequences. I hope that you liked this video, and if you didn't like Dan, please tell me why not, like Dan did, so it gives me the understanding about where you're coming from. And again, Dan, I want to thank you, and Jen, I want to thank you. Ed, I want to thank you too as well, but didn't you responded directly to Dan. I let Dan be able to respond to you, but I thank you very much for writing on there as well. And again, if you hit like. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. If you'd like to become a patron to the endeavor, please hit the subscribe star underneath. Thank you very much. Have a good night and good mental health.